Good morning, everybody. This is Mark Proksch. I'm pleased to be here in this session on strategic partnerships for sustainable SMEs, small and medium enterprises. As you know, this is a session which is part of the UN Global Compact Virtual Leaders Summit, which is an annual event. And unfortunately, because of COVID, we still have to have these meetings in virtual format. Thanks to Zoom, we can have a very good interactive webinar on this issue. And of course, with regard to SMEs, I tell you, I'm the Chief of Investment and Enterprise Development in the United Nations Economic and Social Commission for Asia and the Pacific. And I've been dealing with SMEs for the last 30 years over. Actually, these days we talk about MSMEs, we talk about micro enterprises as well. And I must say that I'm always surprised that after 30 years, we're still addressing basically the same issues, right? I mean, especially when it comes to financing of SMEs, this was a problem 30 years ago, and apparently it's still a problem today. So apparently something is not going very well. There are so many government schemes, there are so many partnerships in place over the years to help SMEs, but now still similar problems arise. Of course, 30 years ago, we were not talking so much about sustainability yet. And now sustainability is, of course, the buzzword, especially because we are all together in trying to achieve the Sustainable Development Goals by 2030. So since SMEs and especially MSMEs make up the vast majority of all enterprises, sometimes more than 95%, 98% of all enterprises, it is, of course, important that they also embrace sustainability. And they often see sustainability as a burden, as an extra cost, but I think that sustainability is going to be necessary for the sheer survival of the enterprises. It's no longer an option, it's no longer a luxury, it is just going to be part of the survival of the business. But we are all in this together. SMEs need help, that is for sure. And now we all know that the COVID-19 pandemic has hit SMEs very, very hard. So we're in all this together to ensure that SMEs are revived and that they are made more resilient to deal with this kind of crisis. And at the same time, that they are being made sustainable. Because after the COVID-19 pandemic, there will be other crises waiting for us. The big one, of course, is climate change. We are on all of this together, and SMEs also will have to revise their strategies to ensure that their businesses are sustainable. Again, this is no longer a choice. This is essential for everybody to do. So the objectives of this session are to discuss the importance of collaboration and partnerships to assist and support SMEs and to share best practices of successful collaborations to empower SMEs in their sustainability journey. And of course, we have to understand when we talk about MSMEs, we're talking about a very wide range of different enterprises, from micro enterprises, cottage enterprises, from the little food stall on the corner of a street to a middle-sized company that provides parts and components to a large transnational, multinational enterprise. So there is an enormous diversity. There are also a lot of SMEs that are headed by women, and they have their own problematic. So it is very difficult to fine-tune solutions for SMEs in a holistic way. So we have a very good set of speakers today in our panel. Let me introduce them very briefly. We have Mr. Amam Sukriyanto. He is the Director of Small and Medium Business of PT Bank Rakyat, Indonesia. And that, of course, is one of the largest state-owned banks in Indonesia and a leading lender to micro, small, and medium enterprises. As a matter of fact, BRI has the biggest SME consumer base in Indonesia and has won some international awards in retail banking, especially for SMEs in innovation, corporate transformation, and sustainable finance. So the next speaker is Mr. Gavin Chua. He is the executive committee member and co-chair of the Sustainability Committee of SG Tech. And he is also the head of Asia Pacific of stakeholder engagement at Facebook. So welcome to this session, Gavin. Then the third speaker is Mr. Mohammed Zaidullah. He is the Chief Sustainability Officer of the DBL Group, that's in Bangladesh. Zahid regularly works with a broad range of stakeholders, including UN agencies, and he's currently managing several sustainability projects. including the Partnership for Cleaner Textiles with IFC and Mothers at Work with UNICEF. Also a female leadership development program. So he makes sure that the sustainability programs at DBL are all aligned with the SDGs, which is very important. Now, finally, we have Mr. Wilson Lowe. He's the CEO of Wilstech, Siderian Berhad. That is an innovative, award-winning IT smart solution provider. Mr. Lowe has more than 10 years of experience with the IT industry in business development and communications, corporate and operations management, and engagement with overseas partners. And of course, Wilstech is a fast-growing company which has won multiple awards for the excellent contribution to the industry, including the SME Emerging Award 2020, the SME Service Excellent Award 2020, Icons in Business Technology in Global Business Leadership Awards 2020. So 2020 was a good year for Mr. Wilson, that's for sure. So with this, let me start with the questions. As I said in the brief introductory briefing, I have 3-4 questions for each panelist. I will ask each panelist one question before I move to the next panelist. And please stick to about 2 minutes, right? 2 minutes max in order to stay within the time. Okay, so let me start with Mr. Amam Supriyanto. Sir, the BRI is a state-owned enterprise with a mission to strengthen SMEs and micro-enterprises in Indonesia. Now, of course, Indonesia is a very big country. It has many islands with various cultures and different needs. So there are many different types of SMEs and micro-enterprises there. How do you see the challenges that we face collectively if we want to work together to ensure the sustainability of SMEs and MSMEs, in particular in terms of providing them with sustainable financing?
Thanks for the questions. So first of all, let me start with the fact that Indonesia is an archipelago state, even the largest in the world. Indonesia is a very wide territory, 7 hours of flight from the very west to the east point, with various geographic conditions, and people density varies in each regions. This creates a big challenge in supporting and sustaining the MSMEs growth, especially for commodities distributions and internet access. So the first challenge that we face is the logistic distributions. Infrastructure developments in Indonesia is not easy due to the conditions of its landscape, which is mostly mountainous and watered areas, including unstable land conditions. The government has allocated huge budget in providing infrastructures and facilities expected to support mobilizations of commodities and services distribution process. New roads, both toll and non-toll, railroads, sea toll, new airports, new seaports were being built. These, in the long run, will stimulate the growth of new MSMEs. BRI is well prepared to optimize this opportunity and thus plays an important role in supporting the growth of Indonesian economy. Other than conventional outlets, we assess the market through our non-conventional channel like ATM, CRM, ADC, internet banking. All channels of BRI are aimed to give easy access to all Indonesians and to faster achieve financial inclusion. The second challenge that we have to develop MSME in Indonesia is the internet infrastructure. We know that the efforts to connect all areas of Indonesia is another challenge posed by the vast and geographic conditions of Indonesia. This caused the digital literacy level in Indonesia was scored only slightly above 3.00, which is moderate, where score 4.00 is considered good. That's according to a survey by katadata.com in August 2020. And how BRI tackled these new phenomenon? We know that the future of MSMEs will depend on their success in adopting the advance of IT. That's why BRI has made a commitment to implement a grand strategy in developing MSMEs in Indonesia through the spirits of Go Modern, Go Digital, Go Online, and Go Global. We realized that BRI could not develop and grow MSMEs by itself. We need to collaborate with other stakeholders such as Government of Indonesia, Member of Parliaments, regulatory body, international institutions, corporations, and so on.
Thank you for that. Can you please share with us what are the lessons learned by BRI when you provide financing to SMEs and MSMEs for business sustainability at the time that we have the COVID-19 pandemic in Indonesia?
That's a good question. So during this COVID-19 pandemic, loan demand has dropped significantly and GDP growth went to negative territory. MSME, which provides jobs to over 90% of the labor force, are the business segment that also hardly affected by this pandemic. However, the government and the other stakeholders responded to these unfavorable conditions accurately, I think, so that the economic downturn can be managed as low as possible. The Indonesian FSA, or Financial Service Authority, OJK in this sense, introduced the relaxation scheme where loan quality is measured with single pillar only, namely the ability to meet payment schedules of interest and principal. By taking aside the other two pillars, the financial conditions of customers' business and the future prospect of the business. The Indonesian government also published regulations on interest subsidy for MSME loan and pay the default credit insurance policy to provide assurance to banking industry. BRI took a very active part and implements a business follow stimulus strategy where BRI focused on growing its loan portfolio through subsidized loans, both interest subsidy and default credit insurance subsidy. This strategy made BRI able to still grow loans by 3.9% in 2020, while loan in the industry grow negative or drop by 2.41%. The government has defined an objective to gradually increase financings for MSMEs, which are considered as the backbones of the economy of Indonesia. MSME loan portfolio in the banking industry is aimed to increase from nearly 20% in 2020 to 30% in 2024. This creates both challenges and opportunities for BRI, which is considered as Indonesia or probably the world's largest institutions focusing on MSME segment. It forces BRI to find its new growth engine, and BRI sees this big opportunity can come from leveraging its competitive advantage in micro segment and even go deeper to the lower market, which is ultra micro segment, by formulating a strategy of 3 go. Go smaller, go shorter, and go faster.
Thank you for that reply. So I will now go to Mr. Gavin Chua. And the first question I want to ask you, Mr. Chua, is what is needed to move SMEs away from adopting green practices and environmental technologies in a piecemeal manner, but to make them adopt a more holistic approach that will create real impact? And there are various aspects of this in adopting green practices, and in particular, with regard to e-waste, what do we need what is needed to make SMEs more sustainable and responsible with regard to e-waste? So you have the floor, sir.
Thank you, Mark. It's a pleasure to be on this panel and to represent SG Tech. For those who are not so familiar with SG Tech, we are a leading trade association for the tech industry in Singapore. But obviously, a lot of the members that we support are SMEs, and they provide a lot of business expansion work in the region as well. So not just for Singapore. That's a great question. I think it assumes that SMEs, the current efforts by them are quite scattered. And to be sure, I think due to the pandemic, the problem is much worse. It's very difficult for them to grapple with sustainability adoption at the same time as dealing with issues such as cost, which is really the first point I want to make, which is on cost. I think cost, and talking about cost, we are really looking at the value of green loans. If you talk about green loans, I think they play a role in helping SMEs to see adoption of sustainability initiatives or solutions. So I think we should look at how green loans can help address the problem of cost for them. The second point I want to make is around simplicity. SMEs naturally have very little resources, as multinationals have. Mark, I think you gave a great summary of all your years of work with working with SMEs. So in terms of simplicity, I think it really helps if they could find ways. I'll give you an example. One of our members, Una Biz, it's a business focused on Internet of Things, IoTs. They work in the area of smart metering, and they're able to find simple IoT solutions that can be retrofitted to existing assets like buildings, right, to help optimize energy consumption. So I think that's a great example of how SMEs can have a greater impact just by way of simplicity. So I've talked about cost, simplicity. I think the last point I want to make is around scale, right? If we talk about impact of SMEs, I think we need to have scale, and many of them don't have the capacity for dedicated R&D, right? That's obvious. So what happens if we provide a collective innovation platform where they can come together and bind their resources, right, to create pilot projects that can bridge sustainability and tech solutions. So one example I want to raise is again one of our members. It's called Sustainable Living Labs, and they have created an innovation platform to allow SMEs to come together, pool their resources, right, and to work on sustainability solutions together at scale.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chua, for that reply. Let me turn to Mr. Wilson Lowe now. Wilson, given the COVID-19 pandemic, your company is an SME yourself, right? Could you share your experience facing the crisis, and also with regard to your observation of other SMEs? How have they coped with the pandemic? What has been their experience? And in particular, we all know that digitalization has played an important role. How important has digitalization become for your company and other SMEs? And how could digitalization play a role for sustainability, to enhance sustainability of SMEs? So it's a group of questions, but you have the floor now.
Yeah. Thanks, Mark. I'm happy to be here to be one of the panelists. Given the COVID-19 pandemic, it definitely gave us a very big impact last year. When the pandemic first happened, then everyone is panicked. Every business is uncertainty. So given the SME and private company like myself, we also feel the same way. Initially, we did, just my experience, initially we did hire a few new staff before the pandemic, just 1 week before, and then the lockdown was announced by our government for the 2 weeks. Then we are in totally panic for that, because you know that there's no activity that can be done, including the economic activity can be done during that day on the earlier stage. So like other SME, they are definitely could not cope with the COVID-19 pandemic at the very first stage. So everyone, especially the retail and the SME, they are hit very badly, because mostly are running their business in a traditional way, mostly are definitely offline, and they did not expect to embrace IT at a very fast pace, like what it should be at the moment. So on that time, we actually help a lot of company and SME to in their digitalization journey. So we as a IT solution provider, we did consult a lot of SME on the retail or even the micro SME on how to start their digitalization journey by doing taking a simple small step once by one. So that is a good turning point for them, because in the new norm, if a company or SME did not goes the digital way, your company might not be able to survive during this pandemic. So a lot of companies are suffering during the past 2 years, and they are looking for hopes or for support from the government and private sector IT solution company like us. So we did cooperate with government on some talks and so on to provide IT knowledge and consultation to the SMEs, so that to let them know the importance of digitalization and what IT can play a role in this pandemic. Yeah.
All right, thank you very much for that. I now turn to Mr. Mohammed Zahidullah. Sir, could you briefly going over why SMEs are so integral to the corporate sustainability agenda? And in particular, like your group DBL, what kind of support can you give to SMEs, especially during this time of economic uncertainty? You have the floor, sir.
Thank you, Mark. So it's a pleasure to be on this particular platform of discussion today related to the SMEs. And first and foremost, I'd like to just give a small intro of DBL Group. This is a manufacturing organization which is totally dedicated for export in the RMG, which is garments and textiles. We employ 40,000 people, and our revenue is $600 million US. So in terms of our procurements, in terms of our supplier base, almost 40% are SMEs, and the rest 60% are large corporations. Okay, and the most important part is that organizations, whether it's DBL or any organization, they cannot survive without SME support, and it is very important that how we are able to empower them, how we are able to bring them to our standard. This is what is going to ensure our supply chain also, and for them to also grow. And if I would like to say, it's even if I go to say about DBL, when we started in 1991, it was nothing but a small and medium enterprise, less than 100 people we were working for. So every SME has the possibility to scale up and to grow. And it is how, big organizations, they can collaborate with them to help them grow. So in terms of support, what is there that, like we have knowledge about the global sustainability. We are one who are practicing sustainability. So, maybe, we can help them in this particular scenario of pandemic by way of, giving them more advance in terms of procurements, like, generally the advance is 20%. We can give them 50%. This is what is there. And also be flexible in terms of the delivery schedule. This is what is in terms of the present crisis also that can help them. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. I now want to go back to Gavin. Gavin, we know that SMEs have often provided and created innovative solutions, often in areas that are neglected by larger firms. But it is also often the fruit of a collaboration with others, like with multinational companies, research institutes, and universities. Can you give us some examples where this collaboration has led to creating innovative solutions? I know that you have a personal interest in greening of buildings. So perhaps you can give an example there.
Sure, thanks, Mark. To be honest, there are not many public examples of SMEs collaborating well with multinationals. I think part of the reason is for the lack of dedicated R&D, I've mentioned in my earlier points, and the cost factor comes into play as well. It's a very different focus. However, I think there are some interesting examples that are out there in the market in recent years. I'll give you one example. Wilson, I think earlier on mentioned about how retail and SMEs are really hit very badly. So there is one example out based in Singapore. I believe they are a startup. It's called Muse with W, Muse.io. They specialize in developing reusable packaging solutions for F&B outlets. That's interesting because it's catering an innovative solution that supports the growth of SMEs, which tends to be a solution that larger firms would neglect, right? So that's one example. But coming back to green buildings, I think there is one rare example I've come across, and this is again a case study that's coming out from one of our members at SG Tech, Unabiz, which provides Internet of Things. They have a very interesting collaboration with a multinational, which is quite well known in the space of renewable energy. It's a French multinational called Engie. They specialize in energy management solutions for buildings, for example. So they partnered together to work with a hospital, and what they've done is to develop IoT sensors that can be installed quickly without additional infrastructure onto the hospital building and integrate it within Angie's building management system. And once they've installed the sensors, it's able to digitize the temperature, the monitoring of humidity, and is using low energy as well. It frees up a lot of time for the hospital staff. It actually allows better patient experience as well. So I think this is one of the best examples I've come across coming out from Singapore. Love to hear from panelists if there are any other examples. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Gavin. Wilson, how important do you think that collaboration is from different stakeholders to support SMEs, in particular to build an ecosystem for sustainable SMEs? And how do you see the role of your own company in this?
Thanks, Mark. Wilson is a IT solution company, so we do customize web system and mobile apps for our customer. And beside on that, we do carry office management solutions such as those HR, CRM, and ERP. So in the term of crisis, COVID-19 crisis, a lot of SME, they are trying to go digitalize, but they do not know where to start, how to start. And for them, digitalization maybe costs a lot for them. So we did come out a solution for most of the SME during that time, whereby we noticed that a lot of SME, they did not even have a proper automated office solution service for those HR, ERP, and accounting software. So we do partner with government on that time, where we give a lot of talks during that period, and we did provide a free subscription of 1 year to all the SMEs that come to us to want to apply on those HR system and ERP system. This is what we think that what we can help them to start their digitalization journey, because a lot of SME, they are doing all the things very manually. So this is one of the way that we could help them in terms of their digitalization journey. So on the different stakeholders to support SME, our government, Malaysia government, also come up a few grants last year, especially on the digitalization grant, whereby allowed one company to claim up to 10,000 ringgit if they embrace IT or technology in their business for those particular area, such as HR, CRM, and so on. And we are also one of the supplier that engaged by government. So government play an important role at that time to provide grants so that SME can claim the grant from all the suppliers that engaged by government, and then to help them to transform their business from offline to online. And I think this is very important for the sustainable and SME. Yeah, thanks.
All right, thank you. Mr. Zahidullah, I mean, also with regard to partnerships, in Bangladesh, where we have so many SMEs, particularly in the garment industries, how can financial institutions, government, and multinational corporations support SMEs in their sustainability journey?
Thank you, Mark. Actually, when we look into the financial institutions, they are very hesitant in giving financial support, in giving loans to the SMEs. But again, there are success stories. Like recently, I heard from one of the ex-CEO of a financial institution, where they have their major client base as SMEs, where he said that just only 1% of their total SME loans is not working. And just of the total revenue loan, what they have given, just it's 0.4%, which has been a bad debt, which has not been recovered. So, compared to the large corporations or the private sectors, the the SMEs, they are very good in their payments. So here, what financial institutions can do is that they can replicate the models of the successful ones and also come up with innovating new products to provide loans. Government, in terms of, they can come up with policies like, in Bangladesh, there's the industrial policy 2006 and this 2016, and it requires timely updating of the policies. And also they can provide some, like, for example, there are about 100 economic zones which is coming up in Bangladesh. Our economic zone can be dedicated to SMEs also, so when they are all housed into one economic zone, the development can be organized in a good way. Whether we talk of the sustainable agenda, a lot of things can come into that place if they are all centered around into one place. And as far as MNCs are concerned, if you want to see, they also can give a good support. They have the success stories revolving around sustainability, where, a platform can be created, where, like, for example, the private sector, including the MNCs, they can have at least, maybe 5% of their SME suppliers, come into that particular platform and help them in developing. So these are some of the collaborations which can be done, and advancement of the SMEs. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Finally, sir, from Indonesia's perspective, what are the key messages that you want to share to SMEs and macro enterprises in order for them to become more resilient in their business?
Before we close, I think we have 3 keys to take away that's probably used to note in the effort to make Indonesia MSME resilient. Firstly, due to the populations of the business, saving Indonesia MSME means saving Indonesian economy. That's why collaborations among all MSME stakeholders, either from legislative body, executive body, the industry itself, the banking industry, central bank and FSA or OJK is really needed. We all need to work hand in hand to educate MSME so they can grow up from micro businessmen to small, then to medium, and the end to corporate, from local business to regional, to national, or even to global. BRI has a convenient and comprehensive programs in doing so, with Go Modern, Go Digital, Go Online, and Go Global that has been initiated, and full commitment to continuously undertake these programs. We are confident that the goal can be achieved in the future. Secondly, digitalization is another key to serve this segment efficiently. So, state-of-the-art system and technology must be adapted to be able to reach out so many untapped markets, especially in the ultra-micro segment. Go smaller, go shorter, and go faster approach of BRI will be able to satisfy this need. Ability to provide these 3 Go slogans will make BRI able to provide a cheaper product or go cheaper, which in turn may boost the growth of MSME. However, digitalizations can be both aimed at digitizing the business process to create efficiency and to finding new business model which are relevant to the changes of customers' behavior and needs. The last thing to consider is that digitalization is merely a tool. To make it work as proposed, human resources implementing the tools have to adopt a new way of doing business. Culture transformations should be consistently undertaken. In case of BRI, relationship manager of BRI should be trusted by his or her customers and be able to give consultative advice to his or her customers whenever needed, so the customer's business growth can be expected. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Given the time, I just have one wrap-up question for all 3 of you. We have discussed partnerships a little bit, but I'm still not quite clear when we talk about partnerships and stakeholders. What are we really talking about? Of course, we can talk about public-private partnership, although they take many different forms. And often when we talk about public-private partnerships, it's a bit of a buzzword, of a kind of a solution for all. But what does it concretely mean? Right? We all know that the private sector is often very suspicious of government, whereas the government is often very bureaucratic and is not always able to uphold their end of the story. But are they the only two? Are there other stakeholders that are important as well? And is there a difference in support that are given to SMEs in general and those that are actually headed by women? I think that is an area which is always a little bit overlooked, and we have also no woman on the panel here today. But very briefly, because I'm mindful of the time, if all 3 of you can give some very brief comments on that, starting with Gavin.
Thank you, Mark. That's one of the best ways to finish off a panel with a question like that. Thanks for asking it. In fact, I'm actually taking the place of our new executive director, Yan Chong. She's female, but just too bad she couldn't make it, so I have to take her place today. But coming back to your question, I think this is one of the most interesting and relevant problem statements that will bring in other stakeholders. As you rightly pointed out, for the longest time, I think it's always between public-private, right, government and SMEs, and over time, there's a bit of a deep-seated suspicion about how much compliance or how much, in this case, how much sustainability reporting SMEs will have to undertake, which will be quite onerous on them, right? Not just on compliance, but on cost as well, right? Many issues. But I think, just to answer your question, this is a problem statement that allows SMEs and governments to consult non-profits like trade associations, like NGOs, and increasingly a lot of youths are very involved in NGOs and that champion sustainability, and they come with ready ideas on how to bridge the gaps, right, between public and private spheres. So I think this is one of the best times for them to consult and listen to these external stakeholders and bring in ideas to drive the solutions. Thank you.
All right, Wilson.
Thanks, Mark. I think this is a great question as well. Yeah, I'm agree with Gavin. Even in my country, there's a lot of NGOs are trying to come up with their voice and submit to the government, and government actually did hear all the voices from the NGO, and then they did create or they did change some of the policy during the last year, so that to benefit more SME and businesses during this pandemic. Yeah, I think the voices from NGO is play an important role during this time, because NGO and SMEs are the one on the field. I mean, they know much better than the government. They might have different point of view with the government, and then I think this could even close the gap between the public and the private. Yeah. Thanks, Mark.
All right. Zahid?
Yeah, thanks, Mark. I'll give you two examples, share two examples of DBL. The stakeholder, community is a very big stakeholder for industries, especially in Bangladesh, where, the workers, they are staying in the local community, just across the factory in the nearby vicinity only, maybe about 5 minutes of walking distance, nothing beyond that. So here what we have done is that, within this community, they are stakeholders. Like, two example is that we have almost about near about 50% of our total workforce are female workers, and they stay in the local community. So around one of the factory, what we did is that we partnered with a local beauty parlor, a small beauty parlor which had just 3 or 4 employees. And we worked together with them. We said, we have our female employees here. It's a big customer base for this factory. It's about 1,500 workers, female workers. So if you give some special discount, then we are going to promote you to our organizations, and even you can come with your products and other things at our campus and demonstrate. And when they come in, walk in at your particular beauty parlor with their ID card, you record the card number and also give them discount, maybe 30, 40, whatever, in different service and all. So what happened overnight, an organization which was in terms of local currency, maybe having turnover of just 20,000 taka, which could be about $250. It went up to almost about $1,000. So this is, what's happening. We are getting benefited, and another organization is getting sustained in terms of economic, in terms of business. And another partnership we did in the local community was that, there's an NGO called Shishu Pulli Plus. What they do is that they bring in women who have been deprived out of houses, married women. They're single, they are staying alone, and they have children also who have like orphans, So they club them together and make them as a family. So here within this organization, they have livelihood restoration plan also for these people. So within 3 years, they provide different multiple trainings, and after that they can go. So with this organizations also, what we did, we started buying products of their handicraft products, like bags, recycled paper products and cards, because we have a fair price shop in each of our factory complex. And also they have also had a beauty parlor which was located within their campus. So we requested them, You come and set up outside our factory, for which we were paying a small rent, which was just 2,000 taka. So we were paying that rent, supporting the NGO, and at the same time, our employees, we have been able to retain. And with this particular thing that everybody wants to look beautiful, everybody wants to feel happy. So there are innovative ways, how you can identify more stakeholders and you can collaborate with this NGO or SMEs and all. Thank you, Mark.
Thank you so much. Yeah, and Bangladesh, of course, is also a good example where microfinancing, especially to women entrepreneurs, has proved to be quite profitable. There's often this reluctance on the part of financial institutions to disburse loans to SMEs because they don't have the track record, they don't have collateral, but actually many have proved to be quite able to return the loans with interest. But I think to a large extent that public institutions went wrong with dispersing credit and credit guarantee schemes to SMEs is because they saw it more as a kind of a bureaucratic procedure rather than being serious about selecting those that are actually deserving of those loans, right? So it is more like many public institutions, they get a budget and they just have to spend the budget by the end of the year, but they're not really looking at how well the budget has been spent, because that is not an KPI. The KPI is, did you spend the budget or not? We have the same problem in the UN, right? I mean, just spend the budget by the end of the year, and same when we do a project. What is your disburse rate? your expenditure rate, instead of looking at what did we spend the money on. And I think also governments do not always have the experience in business. So they are not always really able to determine whether a business is deserving and whether the credit extended to a business is actually good credit. And that is, I think, where we get public-private partnerships, right? Where we actually disburse loans or money to private sector organizations that they're in a much better position, including financial institutions, including banks, to use that money and are better able to see how qualified SMEs are to access those. But of course, there are other issues. We have to wrap it up. I think the two big words when it comes to SME support, apart from partnerships, of course, is digitalization and sustainability. The two, of course, are not exactly mutually exclusive. One will help the other. But again, I have to warn that it is very different for very different kind of enterprises, because the spectrum is massive. If we talk to a small food vendor on the corner of the street, of course, we cannot ask that person to go digital. If there is a lockdown and that person has no customers, that person cannot make money, and that customer cannot feed, that person cannot feed him or herself, right? This is nothing to do with digitalization or sustainability. It is just a fact of life. And here is where governments and NGOs probably have an important role to provide safety nets for these people, right? To overcome these pandemics and to make sure that if they get into a crisis situation like this, that they're not ending up living in the street apart from working in the street. So I think also for the larger enterprises, a lot of them, we always talk about the integration of SMEs in supply chains and global value chains, right? Whereas in actual fact, there are not that many SMEs that take part in these supply chains. They're usually always larger enterprises. Depends how we define SMEs. But to the extent that they are included in supply chains, I do think that multinational corporations that dominate those chains also have a responsibility in ensuring that both their suppliers survive and that their suppliers are sustainable. And they can drive that and they can help that with providing the necessary technology and so on. But if the governments do not provide a level playing field and they do not have the required regulations and the legislation in place to make sure that everybody knows what is at stake, that everybody has to adopt the same sustainability rules, that everybody has to cut their own emissions. If there is no stick behind the door, it's always difficult to do that, because competition drives the market, right? And for many, it's cutthroat competition. They're on the margin of the economy. Just a small increase in cost may drive them out of business. So the challenge is for governments to ensure that the regulation is fair, that they can comply, and that it does not lead to increased poverty and marginalization of entrepreneurs. Well, I want to thank you all and close this session. I think we are out of time. I hope to see you in other sessions in this virtual leader summit. And for now, I wish you all a good day, and I hand it over to the organizers. Thank you so much.